How you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. How you doing?
Good. Good. Thanks for coming on, Yoseph. Really means a
Yeah,
lot.
absolutely.
For sure, man.
Yeah.
You and I met in the Microsoft kind of partner community when I was working there. I
Yep.
came to you're one of your happy hours that you hosted here in West Loop, Chicago. And I
Yep.
loved getting to know you, getting to know your sales style, how you kind of approach your career. So I was
Yeah.
really excited to get you on the podcast and talk about some of that
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Glad to be here.
Cool, man. Yeah. The second time we got beers, we were talking more about like kind of wealth building. You mentioned some of your
Yeah.
expertise in crypto, Web 3.0, that kind of thing. And I think that any content that can be put out there from tech guys like us that can talk about innovation around those areas, I think it's valuable to our networks. So I'd love to pick your brain on some of that stuff too.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I'll just say by no means am I an expert. I'm more of a, ongoing rabbit hole, diver. And then I
Mhm.
just go where I land and then I'll pop back out and
Mhm.
whatever I extract, I extract. And I'm usually not the expert and I probably won't be for a while, but that's the whole learning curve.
Yeah, but that's exactly why I wanted to get you on specifically, is because there's a certain profile of person that is a lifelong learner that wants to keep challenging their minds and their bodies and the things
Yeah.
that they are preconceived notions, like how do they keep growing? And I think that with
Yep.
you, you possess that quality. So really, really honored that you came on.
Yeah. Cool. Let's hop in.
Cool, man. So most of my guests, it's a podcast about motivation, personal development, work ethic. But what
Mhm.
I want to do is maybe cut it back 6 to 8 years to the beginning of
Okay.
your career, maybe when you were in California. What
Mhm.
made you want to get into where you are now in technology sales? Talk to me more about out of school, kind of early 20s,
Yeah.
what you were thinking.
Oh man, early 20s feels like forever ago, but really wasn't that long.
Uh,
So let's see, early 20s, fresh out of USC. Honestly, the not as pretty short story is that I needed to afford life in LA. That wasn't my home. I grew up in Portland. So, having graduated, got the diploma, cool, 4 years in, 4 years out. And then now what, because I've got to pay back Uncle Sam for those
mhm.
nice loans that I took out to go there. So I'd say I spent all of the summer job hunting. I think I had an Excel spreadsheet of like 103, 105 jobs that I applied for that summer.
Yeah.
Everything that I could find under the sun, the easy click button on LinkedIn, apply
Mhm.
here with one button, doing the formal resume and cover letter. And
Mhm.
unfortunately, by the end of that summer, despite my what I thought was a good hustle and attempt, I only got two people or three companies to call back. Of those two or three, only
Mhm.
one made me an actual offer. So I took that job. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't fun. I hated a lot of it. I won't say I hated the experience because I mean it ended up, getting me to where I am. So
Yeah.
if you're seeing this old employer, all nothing but love to you, but not exactly what I planned for when I graduated and came to California. So took that, and then about 5 months into that job, I just realized that this was not aligning to my interests, to my monetary needs, to
Mhm.
logistical traffic nightmares of LA. Just to kind of recap, I ended up getting into food sales, so working for a startup version of Cisco and US Food. So,
Yep.
competing with those guys, going to Hilton hotels and
Mhm.
university frat houses and sorority houses and cafes and just everything where they do high volume food. And that is a sales grind unlike any other, and I didn't enjoy it. So got onto the USC job board, went back out for the job hunt, and then luckily found an opportunity with SADA Systems, and shout out to them and Tony Safoyan. And ever since then, I've just been running with tech, both in my personal life and career.
Yeah. I think a lot of folks like us have that one or two jobs out of school that maybe weren't ideal based on what we wanted in our lives, but they taught us some really super good skills around just, how to come to work, get there, do a development plan, just like sit in your seat and do your work. And then the
Yep.
second job, the third job tends to be a little closer. And then it just takes some years to find your sweet spot.
Yeah.
I know SADA Systems, big company in the tech industry,
Yep.
and there's a consistent pattern with people that I meet just around the progression. Right around the third or the fourth job, that's when they hit their stride. And would
Yep.
love to learn more about kind of what made that specific job valuable to you, and then how you went from there to Cyclotron. Would love to hear more about that.
Yeah. So once I got in, it kind of was just like I mean, I hate to use the fire hose
Hmm.
analogy, but it was drinking from the fire hose in all the best ways. Like I was just learning about a whole new world that I didn't even know existed, which was weird because I would say even before that job, I'm typically pretty good at, I'd say, kind of understanding an industry, even if I'm not in it or, have been in it or really, like, you know what I mean? So kind of understanding general sales dynamics and finance dynamics, I was like, wait, these Microsoft and Google companies and whatever, like they hire whole other consultancies to do the selling for them. I was like, whoa, like, and you can make how much? Your top people are making what?
Yeah.
And so that completely blew up what I,
Hmm.
so kind of rewind. If you can only achieve what you know is possible, and I didn't know what was possible until I got to SADA, and then all of that information, I was like, oh, okay, this is big money and big projects and big clients and traveling on site and establishing 401. My first job didn't have a 401k. Then this job has one. I'm like, okay, this is already a step up, right? Because no
Hmm.
one taught me about that. So as you kind of get in and just you get hit with so many unknowns and you start to just unravel one at a time, then you're like,
Hmm.
okay, so I can do this, I can do that, that is possible, that department exists, that role is available,
Hmm.
this kind of money is achievable, they get this kind of pay structure, this kind of location. And then you start to put it all together, and then you kind of understand this new kind of land and territory. And then from there you just try to find a place in that works for you. And to your point, that third or fourth job where you're kind of finding your sweet spot. And by no means do I feel that I'm at my sweet spot, but I definitely feel like I'm coming up on at least that first phase of it. So
Yeah.
still a story very much in the making, as it should be, because I'm only 29.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. It's always a work in progress. And when I say sweet spot, it's not so much that you're like in a perfect place, you'll be there forever. It's
Yeah.
more you're getting closer to where your natural skills, your natural interests are aligned
Yep.
to what you're doing every day, which I think I wish that upon everyone. I wish everyone had the blessings and the chance to work in an area that, they got to they feel like they belong. So
Yeah.
um when I started my career in tech sales, I was an opener. I was a cold caller, right? I was what's
Yep.
called a BDR, SDR. And I remember
Yep.
that feeling of, oh, wow, like there are people that are closing these deals and their checks are how much? Like they make the how
Yep.
much in commission. And I was
Yeah.
always someone who wanted to minimize the risk of time and effort and work. I'd say
Yeah.
work, but like, work smarter, not harder for maximum payout. Um,
Absolutely.
and
Yep.
considering sales, like if I can be so customer centric and so good with the customer that they want to hand my company and me over this check for six figures, how the heck do I be more compelling? How the hell do I be a better seller? How do I be someone who's consultative and customer centric so that aren't just, obliged to, but they want to work with me and they want to be my partner. And that's when I started going full force at how do I be the best salesperson possible.
Yeah.
And now I've been closing for 5 or 6 years since that point.
Yep.
And what you were saying about SADA system, like, oh, this is possible. I couldn't see what it was like. I saw the sales guy, kind of like the shiny car, kind of speaks fast, is really persuasive, kind of like a slimy, like a bad connotation of what a salesperson is.
Yeah.
But then I realized when I got into that role, like, man, there are people that are really genuine and
Yeah.
solid and like
There's good
values
people
driven.
making good money.
Yeah, and like if you look at the VPs of these companies or the CEOs of these companies, they're outstanding salespeople. you know,
Yeah.
that's what
Yeah.
allows them to be at that place is they know how to speak and build trust and communicate. So I think
Yeah.
a career in sales is just amazing if you want that kind of lifestyle.
Yeah, it's definitely a lifestyle thing, for sure. And to your point, when because I always knew I was going to owe money if I went to school, and so my objective, even coming in the freshman year, is like I got to go to the best school possible for the
Mhm.
lowest amount of money out of pocket possible. And so
Mhm.
that's where a lot of my kind of early beginnings started. It was like I gotta aim high, but I don't got a lot, in my back
Mhm.
pocket or in my wallet. So what can I work with? So it became about, to your point, to become, in the same way you wanted to become a better salesperson, I had to become a better student. And so I think having that better student mindset sort of naturally phased into, how to identify lucrative opportunities for the least amount of hours in and the highest amount of cash flow out. And then how do I take that money and then not, burn it down, to crumbs and ashes? How do I go and take that even further? So I think kind of full circle, our last conversation and this conversation, and then my mindset coming into college are a continuation of the same mindset.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally get that. Is that when you say that, I think it's this idea of like continuously growing and learning what you didn't know before and it's like moving to that next place.
Yeah, but with the mindset of, how do I get the most juice out of this thing, right? Because I
Yeah.
always knew kind of coming in like, all right, you're going to go to USC now that you got this letter, but there's going to be a time when you graduate. And kind of back then, obviously, not the same now, they're saying, oh, good median salary when you graduate is like 35, 40,000. And I
Mm-hmm.
remember running the numbers. I was like, okay, 35, 40,000. That's a lot for me now at 18. But then when I think about rent and mortgage or whatever in life and a car and
Mm-hmm.
going out and whatever, and I'm like, I even realized back then that 35 to 45, quite frankly, that ain't shit. And I'm
Yeah.
not hating on anybody who makes that money by any means. I was there.
Yeah.
That's where I started. But when you know that that's what you're set up for, then you're like, oh man, I got this 4-year clock that I have to beat that number now.
Yeah. If you're in LA doing 30, 35, 40 with gas, I mean, just today with gas, it's like good luck. Unless you
Yeah,
just are walking to work or something. So
yeah,
yeah, again, not hating on anyone that's there. It's like, how do you get to that next place? It's like that's hopefully what you and I are talking about, and that's all I ever
yep.
want for myself and for you and anyone
It's what I
listening.
want for everyone.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we
everyone.
we can
Because
all eat. Yep.
I not being able to eat, I mean, not literally, but I mean, there are people who do, not being able to
Mhm.
get yours in LA of all places, is that's you'll lose a lot of sweat and a lot of sleep over that kind of stress in your life.
Yeah, I honestly can't imagine it. I didn't plan on talking about this, but I think one of the things that I struggle with is like keeping up. If you feel like you're around people that are doing better than you or like doing worse than you, whatever, it's like that comparison thing is just not good. And I know that LA is
Yeah,
it's a lot of image, right? Like
yeah.
how well are you doing, that kind of thing. So I guess
Who you know,
transition.
how much you make.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a wild beast out there, and honestly, that's part of the reason why I opted to leave once the opportunity struck. I wasn't necessarily looking to leave at any time and opportunity and just kind of bounce out. But I just knew that if something came along my way, and it happened to be with the current employer I was at in LA, that being Cyclotron now, um, they asked me, and time wise, I'm like, 9.5 years in LA. I went through the being poor and not having fun phase. I went through
Hmm.
the coming up and developing skills and career phase. And now I'm on the phase of kind of beginning, but definitely not at anywhere near maturing my career and sort of finding that sweet spot again, to your point. And once you start to cross to that next tier, you're like, okay, well, anything that distracts me or gets in the way, it's been fun, but you ain't worth it anymore.
Yeah, for sure. I was really excited to get back to Chicago. I left, went to Dallas. Kind of didn't like
Yep.
Dallas, but I came back to Chicago, and I've always liked it here just for the kind of the hustle that people embody here, and the
Yep.
kind of the nicety, the genuine nature of most people that live here. So
Yeah.
I mean, I could ask you what's the difference between California and Chicago, but I think
We don't have
everyone,
enough time for this
yeah,
podcast to go into those different. I could
it's
write you a dissertation.
yeah. So I'm glad that you hopefully are enjoying it here and the
Yeah.
tech community. I think that now that we're out of the pandemic, that hopefully things are gonna start to open up and you'll be able to host more awesome dinners like that you did where I met you and lots of knowledge sharing in person.
Yeah, I mean, that was really my first time interacting with folks beyond the screen. I mean, when I moved, unfortunately, I was just saying that the timing was great for me mentally, but I
Hmm.
would say in literal, physical time here in the real world, it ended up being kind of crappy timing
Yeah.
because I moved when the pandemic started. So
Hmm.
I didn't get quite the Chicago welcome that I was hoping and experiencing, especially working for a startup. So my home and office, as you can see here, is this has been the home office. So
Yeah.
this has been 2 years here, and definitely been eager to get out and meet folks and really capitalize on the experience. But Chicago's been great. I definitely think regardless of COVID, it's a great place to be with a lot of opportunity, not just career wise, but, across real estate and meeting people and, just entertainment and things to do. I mean, it's a whole, again, I could write you a paper on it. There's a
Mhm.
whole different vibe and everything to Chicago that just LA and, California in general just don't really have too much overlap with. And I think they both have their own things to brag about, and they both have their things to not brag about. And I think, as long as you focus on the good, both sides have their perks.
Yeah, for sure. Like focusing on the good, like you're sitting in your apartment, you said you work long hours there, doing tech sales. Like, are there ways that you motivate yourself throughout the day, to kind of like keep going, to stay high energy? What are you doing to organize your time throughout the day working from home?
Yeah, so I mean, I've got the work hours, which, generally speaking, 9 to 5, maybe a little bit before, maybe a little after. So I mean, if you want me to get into the work day, I can, but I think you're talking more about the general day. So I mean,
Yeah.
generally, I'm trying to, get an hour or two of some kind of, call it, thing for me before work starts, because being in LA, used to be the type of, person and remote worker where, I would be starting at, 8:30
Yeah.
in terms of waking up and getting my day started, 8:30, not, being already having, gotten out of bed. And so for me, it's, try to wake up, usually I'd say 7:30, be out of bed, get some, whether stretching in or workout, reading something. Usually at this point with my routine, it's yoga, just to kind of get the blood flowing and relax. And especially just sitting in a chair all day, like your body genuinely needs to move before you become, stationary, which we weren't meant to do as human beings. And
Yeah.
so try to squeeze that in, get some good food in, and then, a little bit of caffeine, jump into the workday. Fortunately, being at Cyclotron, they focus on what they call work-life integration. So obviously I'll make my commitments. If I got to be in a meeting, I'm in the meeting. If I got to prep for one, I'll prep for it. If I got to get out, emails and follow-ups, I do that too. But, anytime I have, that break, 1 hour, 30 minutes, whatever, go for a walk around the apartment, instead of lunch inside, just maybe go grab a quick bite somewhere else, just cause, you know what I mean? Like, just change your scenery, change your vibe, literally get the blood flowing in your joints and in your muscles. And that is a lot of it. And then, after hours, trying to kind of, again, go back into focus on, an hour or two of something that, contributes to you. And as much as I love Netflix, I'm not talking about that quite yet in the day. It definitely does happen though. So typically I'm trying to get in like an hour of reading or an hour of, a workout of some kind, and then, pop over the dinner, and then, Netflix and chill, or continue with, whichever one of those two things after work I didn't get to, and just try to maximize those remaining, 5 hours of the day that I have before I call it, sleep
Yeah.
time.
I love a couple of things you said there. You talked about the beginning of the day and how important it was to move your body. I find
Yeah.
myself, I walk to get coffee, or I just get up and ride my bike to the coffee shop just to like see sunlight, just to move my muscles, right? So
Yep.
that's kind of like the caffeine and the moving of the body. And I start, generally 9:30. Some mornings if I have a call at 8:30, no problem. I'll just push it up an hour. But I love what you said about getting out of the apartment, just because, like, okay, like I could eat whatever is in my place, but I'm gonna go just take a walk around the block, to switch up the scenery, right? Like,
Yep.
I always feel better after just a 10-minute walk like that. And then
Yeah.
last, like talking about yoga or things to work out. Man, like I can't explain how good I feel after a hot yoga class or after
You're
lifting
you're a brave
weights.
one. I definitely haven't
Yeah.
ventured into hot yoga. That's too much for me. But I mean, I'll just pop open a YouTube video,
Hmm.
whatever I feel like is hurting that day or that
Yeah.
morning, and just, do that. And, I absolutely I know there's a few people who know me on personal life, and they saw this video like, man, Yosa's talking about doing yoga before work. Like, who is this guy? Like, he used to take a crap on doing yoga. And I'll admit, I used to be a naysayer. I apologize to anyone I may have offended in the past. You were right. I owe you, buy you a drink. Let's call it good. But I mean, yeah, I mean, it helps with workouts. It helps with focus. It helps with a lot of, just other things. And just in terms of, again, we're not meant to be stationary. So the more that you can keep your body moving, your energy's up, you feel good all around, and you can get back to doing what you really need to do. And it's only 30 minutes. Like, I commend you for hot yoga, but I'm not doing hot yoga anytime soon. That's a
Yeah.
little advanced for me.
I think the benefit of hot yoga is that it's at a class. You can't, if you leave, it's like there's the shame or whatever. But I've been doing it for 5 or 6 years now, and it's getting easier to deal with the heat. Some instructors go really hard on certain things. But yeah, like I have no problem opening a YouTube video of like core power C2 30-minute in the morning. And that it's just even just 30 minutes helps tremendously. But I was with you
Absolutely.
completely like naysayer, that's what girls do. But it helps with everything, mental and
Yeah.
physical.
Yeah. Through and through for sure.
Cool. Okay, let's switch it over to crypto, some of the innovative stuff. I'll
All right.
start. So like I bought $100 of Ethereum last year. I bought $100 of Bitcoin last year just to see what would happen.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a full year, more like 6, 8 months. And they've kind of
Yep.
stayed stable, if not gone down a little bit.
Yeah.
That's my idea is to hold, just hold, hold, hold.
Yeah.
Um, let's start with like the basics. I
Hmm.
understand crypto. You help me understand the blockchain. They're built on the blockchain, right? But for
Hmm.
anyone that's like super nascent to it, is there anything you could say that's just fundamentals of why you want to get into it, why you should care about it? What are your thoughts on it?
Uh, the basic, I guess, one liner I would give is that if you ever had a problem or a business situation, whether you were like on the customer and the helpline or whatever, like, man, I just wish that there was some way that you guys could have just figured out with all the money you make to do XYZ. I would say 9 times out of 10, if not, I'll, shout out to Outcast, 11 times out of 10, there's going to be a solution for that with blockchain. It might not be created yet, it might not exist yet, but I'm willing to bet that it's on somebody's product roadmap or somewhere out there. And I mean, when you can remove the middleman, you can achieve so much more in life. And whether this is personal, tracking your order shipments more efficiently, as things come in with all this, backlog that we have with, just, getting shipments out and logistics and supply chain. That's, one big kind of overarching. If you order anything from Amazon, you're affected by the lack of blockchain, I would say. If you are an artist of any kind, and I'm not saying professional, you are suffering by not using blockchain, right? Like you could be capitalizing on royalties and audience engagement to a whole new level that hasn't been able to be, done before. And I think like a great example of that would be, Snoop Dogg and what he's doing with Death Row Records. So I don't know if but Snoop used to be on death row with Suge Knight, and that's a whole different conversation. And Suge Knight is no longer with death row, and so now Snoop is the rightful owner of death row, and he has taken that back and resurrected the label. But instead of being a real label, it's a meta label, and so they're releasing all of their content exclusively with NFTs and the blockchain, which that is a whole other debate in terms of the effectiveness in terms of audience engagement. But I'd say if we could fast forward 10 years, it's those kind of moves that are going to make the people on SoundCloud and the people are trying to get up to the top 25 ranks, a lot more out there in terms of ownership and what they can do, rather than needing to take a $250,000, what's essentially a loan from a major record label, and then flip that into an album in which they hopefully release it on time and under budget. Because if not, you owe some very powerful people a lot of money, and they're not very negotiable and nice when you owe them stuff. So you can take that control and squeeze that out for whatever it's worth. And so just as you think about things like that, that's where I think the blockchain ultimately helps us. I don't think it's going to be a situation where, and I hope not at least, where we're all meta and all digital and all on screens 100% of the time. I think like with anything in life, there's going to be a choice, and you can make the modern choice, you can make the yesterday choice, or you can make the yesteryear choice. And that's entirely up to you and how you want to move in life.
Yeah. The first thing you said about keeping, I think it was like transparency, it can solve anything. It's blockchain is basically a ledger, right? That allows you to
Yep.
see the record of what has happened in
Yeah.
transactions, right?
Yep. Yeah. So basically, a blockchain is what's called immutable. So you can't change it, right? Like once it's created, it has this thing called a hash. Hash basically locks it, can't make any changes. And all you can really do, kind of like, whatever that principle about energy is, you can't create or destroy it, it's only transferred. So in the same way, yeah, the blockchain is at some point created. Sure, let's ignore the lack of science overlap for that part. But once it's made, between you and me, if I buy something from you, Nick, whoop, I get that receipt. It's on the blockchain. There's no way to refute it. It happened. It's been transferred. Everyone can verify it and view it. If you want to dispute it, great. The ledger is also the judge, the jury, and the executioner in this case. So rather than going through a bunch of third parties and a bunch of other people and deliberation, is it there or not? Black or white? Yes or no? And that's, I think, for a lot of non-emotional, non-interpersonal situations in life, that is the solution for a lot of problems.
Yeah. It's like, it's just, again, going back to the sales thing, like if you can be credible and trustworthy and transparent, with that kind of reality that we all live in, imagine if you didn't have to be transparent, like you didn't have to show that you are trustworthy, right? It just is.
Yeah.
Like
it just exactly, yeah.
And if you're not trustworthy, you get exposed pretty quickly, right? And then it's like,
or you don't benefit the from the value prop that comes with the blockchain. So in the same way, people always make this argument like, oh, what's the point of an NFT? Can't you just take a picture of it? But all right, cool, yeah, take a picture of a picture. Just like the same thing, if I walk out in front of a runway to take a picture in front of a jet, that jet's not mine. I might have been there, sure, but it's not mine. It's there and belongs to someone else. And like you said, it just is. So like if people know me, they're like, yeah, Yosef doesn't have that. That's not his. Can you prove it? And I can make you this fake ass receipt and here's my little transfer title, whatever. But eventually somebody will call me out. Versus the blockchain, it's here. Cool. Next. What's the question? Where's the debate?
Yeah. So when you say that Snoop Dogg took, Death Row Meta, he basically made it so instead of asking for rights or selling the rights to those songs, he's breaking them up into NFTs. Like, help me explain how a visual image, or whether it's an audio image, whatever that means, can be purchased or owned by individual people.
Yeah, so they will basically there's a limited supply of the album. The album's all digital, so MP3 or whatever the audio file is. That sits and is connected to the NFT. And the thing about NFTs is that it can be an image, but it's not it's not tied to being only an image, right? So you can sell the NFT, which is just non-fungible token, which basically just saying it can't be changed, and it's a tokenized version of that thing. So you get a unit of said album. That album is so tracks 1 through 12 in this unit is number 001 for Nick, and then 002 for Yosef. So if it only goes to 10, there's going to be no 11, right? So now we are this niche market of very, very, very exclusive rights holders where we can do anything we want with that because we are the sole and full owners of that, versus Snoop Dogg, even as a label owner, just like with a grocery chain, they have distribution channels, or like Microsoft has distribution channels. So if you release an album, you got to get a distributor and a publisher to push that out to venues and radio stations and whatnot. Or Snoop Dogg said, screw it, I can do all this by myself. People like me enough. It'll get there however it needs to get there. He might have some plan that I just haven't found online. And I'm going to reach a set limit. Set limit's going to be worth X amount. And those people who get it, they get it, and that's it. And then I'm going to keep continuing to push out exclusive content. And then it basically means you don't have to sell as many albums to make as much money.
For sure. So Snoop Dogg in that situation created some sort of finite amount of, what was it, of the copies of the album.
Yeah.
Okay. And how does go ahead.
I was going to say, yeah. And then each album has a unique identifier because of the blockchain. And so so if you bought it, it'll go to your wallet, sit there, and then you can access it, whatever, pull it. If you want to sell it, that's fine. You have the right to sell that for resale, which can also, you can yourself tap into a lot of money as a, reseller of NFTs. And then you take that and, then it gets transferred. If I buy it, then it'll say, okay, Nick bought from Death Row Records NFT album, let's say it was $100, but I think it was really like $1,000, something crazy, because
Mhm.
it's an NFT. So it was like $1,000, and then you get that in exchange. Snoop gets the 1,000 in Ether or whatever that currency exchange is. If you sell it to me, you can set your own price for that, and then either I can buy it from you for the same 1,000, or I will give you, say wrapped, some Ethereum or whatever for, 2 times, 3 times, 4 times the price. So it creates I don't know if false market is the right term, but a false sense of scarcity, right? Because that's sort of what I was saying before, is like it sort of limits, which is a whole other conversation, of the potential audience reach. But at a certain point, you don't care as an artist what your reach is, right? LeBron and Snoop and Tom Brady are always going to be LeBron, Snoop, and Tom Brady. So they could do whatever they want with a smaller amount. But if you're fresh, you need to do higher volume for the same output, if not more. And so they have just contracted not the obligation, but the, call it, creation cycle that goes into producing, releasing, and making money from an album. So it's saving time, saving money, making more money, in fact, for them, versus doing it through, publisher, record label house, DJs, Apple, music charts. Like you got to go through a ton of parties to get the same output as a, artist or performer.
For sure. And then going back to the example about the taking a photo of the jet, you don't own the jet. If I was to try to sell my photo of the jet, right? Let's say that the jet is the NFT. It sits on a wall, or it sits on my screen. I take my iPhone and
Yeah.
I take a picture of my screen.
Yeah.
How does the blockchain, if I was to try to sell the photo of the NFT of the photo, right? How would it keep me honest? How would it keep my buyer honest?
Because it wouldn't have the code tied to the NFT specifically of the jet, right? So any item on the blockchain is going to have a unique identifier. So
Sure.
let's just say the jet was like XB1, NFT dash star, whatever the mumbo jumbo code is. If you try to sell that on the blockchain, people are going to be like, well, I know that from the public ledger view that the jet is X dash whatever,
Yeah.
blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
You gave
Okay.
me a picture that says BZ10. That's not it.
That's not it.
I'm not
Yeah.
going to buy that. So it's
Mhm.
that kind of verification where it's like, okay, you
Mhm.
claim it's that thing, but I can just see whether or not it is that thing. And then
Yeah.
doesn't matter what a picture says, it's what the code says.
And where's the public ledger? Is it at nfts.com? Like where does it
Yeah,
sit?
so it depends on what you're doing. I mean, there's different scanners. So there's like an Ethereum wallet scanner. There's a insert, Bitcoin scanner. And so depending on what you're trying to buy, I mean, even like Vitalik, who, created Ethereum, you could see what's in his wallet right now. You don't know just from the number that it's his, but by, kind of you're like, okay, so this wallet from back in the day had the most amount of, so like, all right, that's Vitalik, right? Like you
Mhm.
can kind of figure it out that way. So it's like, all right, the guy who has the most, that's probably him, right? So you can, in the same way that, you sort of follow, trends or, technical analysis, there's sort of a similar analysis, which I don't really do because I'm not, I'll call it, I like NFTs, but I'm not personally too invested in them, just from a early stage standpoint. But I mean, it's all verifiable. There's a website for damn near everything to scan and prove and see, and yeah, so it's all out there.
Cool. No, thanks for all that info, man. Like I feel like I'm still learning stuff, and to you it seems like second knowledge, like no problem. How do you stay sharp on all this? Do you read specific sites or read specific books?
Yeah, I mean, kind of like I said before, it's kind of just running through the rabbit hole. So I mean, it's a combination of Twitter and YouTube and, CNBC and, my personal, connections and network, and then, LinkedIn. So you just kind of like with that first SADA job, you realize what's out there, and then you just try to find the different sources, see who's, and, not just the loudest, but also, valuable. So, you start to follow different thought leaders and
Mhm.
groups, and, those who you think have a little bit more of a credible voice. And then you start to see where there's overlaps with other people, on different sides of the point. And like, oh, okay, so-and-so said, invest in this. And then a couple of days later, so the other so-and-so said, invest in that too. So it's like, okay, that might be something I need to bookmark and, look into and research. And then you go through again, Twitter, YouTube, whatever, and find video content and try to just be a little bit of an investigative, person there, and
Mhm.
just put the pieces together.
So a combination of like traditional media, books, YouTube, everything, Twitter, right? Like social media.
Yeah, I mean, it's the digital age. I mean, if you're not on your computer, you're not gonna know, you're not gonna be able to find out. So I mean, I would always recommend to anyone, if you're just starting out, if you don't have Twitter, get Twitter. If you don't have YouTube by now, definitely get on YouTube. And I mean, I call YouTube University. I mean, that's where I started learning about just investing in general. So I mean, if you looked at my history over the past years, you'd be like, what in God's name is this guy doing with YouTube? Does he
Mhm.
watch any funny cat videos during his free time? And the answer would be no, I don't.
Yeah. I
Trying to make some money.
I pay for a YouTube premium. I have for the last couple of years just to skip the ads. I'm kind of constantly on that and Spotify, acquiring knowledge, just like listening to
Yeah.
podcasts, to interviews.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I in the pack that you sent me, I love the second video about Ethereum, and the seventh one, or the final one. It was a short video, but like these are experts, like, somewhere near your level, who are like just saying this is the fundamentals here, guys. Like, here are three things that would help you, and it's like if you can distill it down to those things, at least
Yeah.
it helps me. So
Yeah. Yeah.
cool.
Absolutely.
Kind of final topic here, and feel free not to go as deep or as deep as you want to. I sense that you have a real drive. For me, I was raised in the inner city in Indianapolis, and my parents were helpful. But then I had other mentors besides my parents that kind of instilled certain things in me. With you, were your parents instrumental in some of your drive, or were there other people? I know that you're Ethiopian. You said, you're first generation, second generation. I hope I got that right. But help me learn more about where your drive comes from.
Yeah. So yeah, I am a first generation Ethiopian American. Definitely my parents, help instill, some good lessons and morals, in terms of my upbringing. Mostly, grew up with my mom, in terms of, my upbringing. So a lot of that was really driven through her. And just sort of, seeing a lot of what she was going through in terms of just, being fresh to the country, learning the language, trying to get jobs, affording bills. And
Sure.
I definitely, I by no means grew up, rough, or, had a bad upbringing, but definitely there were, I'll call it moments of just not like everyone else, I'll put it. And so, you go through enough of those, and you just, uh, you know, partly grew up a little bit faster than most people. So a lot of people will tell me like, man, like, how are you only, 28, 29 years old? Like, I thought you're older, and not because you look older, but just, from the way that apparently I carry myself, and sort of topics like this that I'm, getting into. And so, you kind of go through some things, and you kind of witness things firsthand, like having to, go to work with your parents because, daycare wasn't an option for a little bit, or, trying to, play for that sports team, but, can't quite afford that tier of it. So you got to go with, YMCA versus, something else. So, there's little trade-offs and little moments. Oh, like, hey, you can't do that trip, you can't do this. And, it's not from a bitter place, but, you hear no, or you hear I don't know, or you hear, we'll see enough in life, and you just start to be like, fuck it, I'm gonna figure it out myself.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, that's kind of what I'm doing. It's not always pretty, not always perfect, and I've definitely stumbled and burned probably a few bridges along the way. So again, apologies to anyone out there who I might have burned a bridge on. It's nothing but love at this point, just growing and maturing. And you just kind of take that with you from childhood to teen, and teen to USC, and USC to getting out of that first job that didn't go so planned. And you learn more, absorb more, multiply, what you were trying to do more.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I heard a couple things that rang true to me. Like, you kind of have to figure it out. Like, my parents didn't have everything that I wanted, most of what I needed, but even what I needed, I had to kind of figure it out. I had to find people in my life that could do that for me, and or help me get there. And like, you can only hear no. I feel like I've applied, and I've not gotten, you know, a lot of jobs.
Yeah.
And I'm like so damn good at interviewing now, because like
Yeah.
I've
And
been through
but
the
the thing is, I'm
ringer,
not even
man.
talking about jobs. I mean,
Yeah.
just the no's of like, hey, do I qualify for this program? Oh no, you need this, and this as a
Mhm.
prerequisite. How would I have
Yeah.
known that if I didn't have this at this point? It's too late for me to go back and do those five
Yeah.
things. So now I know that that's not an option, or I have to do whatever years and months of work
Hmm.
around to play catch up on this game. So um, it I don't know who coined the term. I definitely, not to give him, too big of a shout out, but back to Tony Safoyan. I know he's big on this idea of infinite game, and I know I've also seen it before on the internet. So I don't know who coined it, but this idea, just like you're kind of always chasing and improving, and there's always, at least for me, there's always been the sense of there's always a catch up. Like, and not that I'm behind and trying to keep up with the Joneses, like the LA part of the conversation that we had earlier, but just more of the sense like, okay, I know I want X and I don't have these ingredients to get there. You got to figure out this other way to make that happen, or pick something else. There's no time or room to cry, bitch, and moan about
Hmm.
it. Like, this is what it is. You got here, someone else's dice rolled them a 6. You might have gotten a 3, doesn't mean your game's over. Just roll with what you got, no pun intended. And you can still win the game. You got to keep playing it.
Yeah. You got to keep going. Infinite Game. Who was that author? Or who was the guy?
You might have
Safoyan.
to Google that on the side there. But I'm pretty sure it's a book, maybe just I don't know. It's a lot of stuff,
Hmm.
man. It's one of those just new digital transformation,
Yeah.
I feel like, terms, but I like this, one of the ones I like. So like, kind of like I was saying before with the rabbit holes, you're always kind of just in one and down and going horizontal, and then it's kind of like Dig Dug, right? Like you're never really done until you pop back up officially for some air.
For sure. Yeah. Not just with jobs, but with any opportunity, anything that like, hey, you needed these prereqs or, this experience. It's
Yeah.
like I find that I sort of have a lack of not respect, but lack of patience for authority or like rules because I just figure it out. Like there's YouTube University. And,
Yep.
um, anyway, really appreciate you coming on, man. Really enjoyed talking with you about just life, your schedule, Web 3.0, crypto, all that. Hopefully, we can get
Yeah.
drinks here soon in the West Loop. And again,
Yeah,
thank
for
you.
sure. Yeah, appreciate it, man. No doubt.
Cool. Okay. We'll have a good rest of the night. And until next time.
Yep.